Okay, so you want me to make another video on Hyperbloom. Now, I say another, I made a lot of videos on Hyperbloom, but that's okay because I love Hyperbloom. I love the Dendro element and its reactions. Specifically, you want me to talk about the artifact sets. So that's what we're gonna do. Now, before we get into that, I do wanna say, if you like my content, do be sure to subscribe. I hit like 1,200 subscribers after just a few months of YouTube, so that was fantastic. So do be sure to do that. And now, before that, what do you think of the new mic? I like it. I've been playing around with the settings. I say I like it. This is the 5th time I've recorded this because of some audio issues that I've had to figure out. I think I got them figured out. Lucky number 5. Okay, so first we are going to do a quick overview of the Hyperbloom reaction. Now, Hyperbloom reaction is going to require Dendro and Hydro and then Electro. So if we use Dendro and Hydro to create this bloom, then we are going to trigger that bloom with our Electro character. So when somebody talks about a trigger, this is what they mean, right? Kuki is going to be our Electro trigger for the Hyperbloom. Hyperbloom is going to seek out an enemy, dealing Dendro damage. Now, there are 3 ways that are accessible to all characters in this reaction to increase your damage of the Hyperbloom. First is going to be the level of your Electro trigger. So we want it as high as possible, 90 out of 90, not 80 out of 90, 90 out of 90. So next is going to be the stat, which is going to be Elemental Mastery, EM. We want EM as high as possible. Now, because the Electro character is triggering the Hyperbloom, these stats only matter on that character, on your Electro character, for the Hyperbloom damage. Now, the 3rd way is going to be the artifact set, Deep Woods. Now, Deep Woods is going to decrease your enemy's resistance to Dendro, meaning that your Hyperblooms, because they are Dendro damage, are going to do more damage. So those are the 3 ways that are kind of accessible to every character for increasing Hyperbloom damage. Now, the level and elemental mastery of your Dendro and Hydro character do not matter for the Hyperbloom damage. They matter for their own damage, they matter for some other things, but it does not matter. That stuff on those characters does not go into the Hyperbloom damage. It is just those 2 stats for your Electro character. So as far as Electro Hyperbloom triggers go, Kuki is the best 4-star. Raiden is the best 5-star. Some other options are going to be like on-field Yaimiko and even Dory. C6 Dory with Farina for a Quicken Bloom team is actually really, really good. We'll talk about that in a different video. So now the artifact sets for your Electro trigger. First off, we're gonna have Flowers of Paradise Lost, which is the set that I run on my Kuki for Hyperbloom triggers. Now, 2-piece gets up Elemental Mastery. 4-piece has a stacking mechanism that the more times you trigger Hyperbloom, the higher the damage is going to go, up to 4 stacks. So this is going to increase the individual damage of the Hyperblooms, not your overall Elemental Mastery on the 4 set, on the 4-piece. And while Flowers of Paradise Lost does technically have the highest damage ceiling for Hyperbloom, let's look at the other set. Gilded Dreams. 2-piece is going to get up your Elemental Mastery. 4-piece, if they are the only Electro in your party, it's going to give you another 150 Elemental Mastery, which is crazy. That's a lot of Elemental Mastery that you can get from this one set. Now, at similar stats and level, the first 1 to 2 stacks of Flowers of Paradise Lost will hit lower damage than Gilded, which is going to always give you the same damage. The 3rd and 4th stacks of Flowers of Paradise Lost should hit higher damage than Gilded Dreams if with similar stats on the character. Now, one of the reasons though that I said technically Flowers of Paradise Lost has the higher ceiling, Gilded Dreams is going to be the better set to go for because the domain that it's in is also where you get Deep Woods, which you need for the Dendro character creating the blooms so that way you can get the Dendro resistance drop. The other artifact set with Flowers of Paradise Lost is a very niche set that if you don't have specific characters is useless. So going for Gilded is gonna also get you Deep Woods, which is phenomenal. Just having Deep Woods, the 4-piece, regardless of whatever stats it gives you, is really good for doing Hyperbloom damage. So now we're gonna look at the actual reaction in slow-mo. So we're gonna use Nahida, we're gonna use her skill on the enemy, and you see, because of Deep Woods, we're gonna get the Dendro resistance drop. Then we're gonna bring out our Hydro characters, creating the blooms, and then we're gonna have Kuki's skill trigger the blooms to go seek out an enemy and deal Dendro damage. And you're gonna see that Kuki is gonna hit like low 30,000 up into the mid 30,000s because of the stacking effect of Flowers of Paradise Lost. Now this is it real time, and while it's happening behind me, do note that enemies can take 2 instances of Hyperbloom damage every half second. So with Kuki, you don't necessarily have to worry about that unless you're just making a ton of blooms. Raiden, you do. Sometimes you might have to actually attack a little slower, so that way you are not triggering too many Hyperblooms. That may already be done. It only takes me like 30 minutes to clear this domain because Hyperbloom in this domain is just amazing. So that is going to be it for this video. If you do have any questions, do be sure to leave it down in the comments. Myself or someone else, be sure to answer it, and I'll see you in the next one.